of dreaming, and by dreaming I mean lifetime dreaming and not nighttime dreaming. Of dreaming, and by dreaming I mean lifetime dreaming. And so that refers to the waking mind and the way that we are called into a future possibility, a vision, an image, a possible reality through some kind of burning desire that sometimes can manifest as a vision. But when we go into some deeper, profound teachings of the whole existential, what we call primordial, prima materia, the beginning of all things, the origin of all existence, we can see that we actually have a very profound way as human beings to actually activate something from nothing. And tonight I'm going to share with you how your dreaming life, your waking dreaming life, is a way where that is naturally beginning to happen. And what you need to do next is to start to activate that more consciously with time, energy, meditation, visioning exercises. There are many different ways so that you can make that dream even stronger, even clearer, and then start to actually seed your daily consciousness with that image or that vision or that activated dream. And the Native American Indians did this. The indigenous tribes of Australia did this. Many shamans all around the world from indigenous knowledge systems did this. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Helenique Audgeroux. I like to go by the name Helen Audgeroux. Now, you're very welcome to find out more about me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on High Intelligence on YouTube. You'll see I run under different names. I've done many different projects through my life and worked in many different ways, crossed a spectrum, you could say, of human behavior and esoteric science. And so today I want to bring this all together because I really want to show you the neurobiology behind one of the most powerful skills we have as human beings, which is this ability to create a vision for our future. I want to share with you a few very interesting catchwords that are going to help you understand very complicated stuff in very simple ways. I hope to manage that tonight because one of the words I'm going to share with you is this word dream self. And by this I mean the part of you that you are dreaming to become, or the part of you that you have always dreamed you would become, the part of you dreamed you would become before you were born, the part of you promised yourself you would be before you were born. That's your dream self. And the only reason it's in the dream is because you still have to activate it. It's only there in the moments when you're dreaming of the things that you say you want, the things that you think could be possible, the things that you imagine, the things that you desire for, but somehow don't see yet happening. All of manifestation theory, all of goal setting is trying to help us understand how to make that dream happen. And so tonight I want to make it very clear that we're using this masterclass opportunity to learn more about that from the neuroscientific perspective. Psychologically speaking, what are we doing when we do all that? And how do we make it even more successful to reach our dreams and to actually make them reality? And how do we use that in a time like the one we're in right now for epic transformation? And why do we need to do it now more than ever? Well, because we really need fast action ways to heal, to build immunity, and to elevate our destiny. Because all the systems that we've been busy with in the world are actually collapsing. They no longer suit us. And we have to evolve quickly. So this is a live masterclass for Women of Truth, Revolutionizing the Future of Women's Health. And so because of this specific focus on health, tonight I want to give you the option to actually use the dream self visioning meditation that I'm going to be teaching you as an active visioning exercise to activate your health and vitality if you do have an illness, if you are in recovery, or if you are feeling vulnerable in any way. This is an excellent one that you can do. And anyone who wants to top it up or take it to the next level just has to add in a few key instructions when we do the visioning meditation, which will help take it up a notch, which will help you bring in even more powerful, useful activations for new levels of growth and expansion in your life. So health and vitality is the basic use of it. And then you can actually begin to bring in extra ones. Now, I've offered an opportunity to you on this journey with me tonight to actually ask a question. And I want you to have it in the back of your mind as we go through this content, because you want to be asking a question tonight as though you were asking a wise woman who sits on the oracle. The omphalos was a very powerful piece of stone that was shaped like a cone in some cultures. It is said that that was the navel of the universe. And I don't know if you know much about the navel, but in esoteric sciences, in Eastern philosophies, in ancient Greek teachings, the navel is a very symbolic, powerful power base. It's almost representing the source of all knowledge, all truth, all power, all reality. And really, in physiological terms, when we are born, that's the first part of us that develops, is the navel. And we have those sayings where the angel will come and give a little fingerprint, like a little stamp of approval in your belly button. When little children ask their mothers, what is that? That's what mothers say. They say, the angel came and gave a little stamp of approval there. And it's very interesting to know that that's where your cells start to form, around your navel. That's where you're tied to your mother. So in psychological terms, there's lots of symbolic reference to this. The umbilical cord that ties you between your origin and the world that you're born into. So this oracle that tells the truth is sitting on the navel of the world, on the source of all creation, and able to divine or to tell you the truth. And this oracle is inside of you, actually, at any time, at any moment. It's like your wise woman, your wise older self, you could say, but it's actually even more than that. That's why I don't want to just refer back to the wise woman within, because we're talking about the dream self now, which is a part of you that you haven't yet become, and the part of you that you already are at the same time, because time and space is an illusion. And I'm going to prove that to you with neurobiology, gently, not totally, but gently. So as we go into this masterclass, the neuroscience of dreaming, as I said, we're talking about very important cultures from way back when that would actually do many different rituals and ceremonies around calling in the dream for the community, going into altered states to commune with altered awareness, supreme intelligence, and to bring back visions about what the tribe needed, what the community now needs to do. And the shaman who would do that journey would actually then transmit that information, translate it, and execute it, help execute it with the people. He was like the oracle for the tribe. And today we have to learn how to become our own oracles for ourselves. And I'm going to teach you that process at the end of tonight's training. Before we get to the process, I'm going to share with you, though, how we actually come to understand this information from a psychological, neurobiological, and spiritual holistic presentation. And to do that, you see my title here is Your Dream Self as Your Shaman. I could say your dream self as your internal oracle. I could say your oracle as your internal shaman. These words are interchangeable because what is outside is really just symbolic of what is within. We often project things out into the world, and we do that to play around, to really elevate our consciousness at some point, eventually to realize that I am just reflecting something from within me. But we can't do it automatically. So that's why we have to project it outside. So we have a mother and a father outside of us in order to teach us how to mother and father ourselves, right? And the same thing is happening here. I'm trying to get the view here. Just bear with me. I don't know why I'm struggling with that. Maybe this is, there we go. Very good. So your dream self is your personal shaman. I was on a retreat recently, a summit called Your Inner Healer Within. And that could be really the inspiration for this training. I'm going to teach you tonight about the brain, the hemispheres and the brain waves, why they are important to understand in this context. What is neurogenesis and how does it fit into our story tonight? The pineal gland and the faculties, the qualities of imagination and visioning, and what they are actually doing for us when we are in this process of dreaming. And then I'm going to share with you something that's very exciting and new. I've never taught it before. I hope to succeed enough to make it digestible enough and hopefully show you a video on it as well called Emergence Theory, which talks about the universe and this power of attraction between two forces, and how this explains very much how we evolve, why we evolve. And this is the key turner for our time in human history right now, that we are on this frothy edge of evolution as a species. So our ability to learn to dream higher, to elevate our destiny, to take more seriously what we are dreaming into the world, and to be responsible for what we're dreaming for, to be accountable to it, to check it out, to also be flexible and agile enough for it to unfold and for it to arrive in our lives, and for us to make it work in reality, is also really important, because at this time in the world, doing that collectively as groups is really what's going to build the future of our planet. And if we don't do enough of that work, we are probably going to end up in some version of extinction. So there is some seriousness to the way the universe is evolving right now. And all of this 2020, 2021 timeframe has woken many of us up to the bigger priorities, the real seriousness of our planet's resources. And it's also mobilized this collective thinking, this synergistic community thinking around the planet, realizing we're all in this together, understanding that we have to work more globally. And of course, when we dream together as collectives, we can become much more powerful in the way we activate those future realities. And the truth is, we're doing that whether we're conscious of it or not. So every doubt, fear, and anxiety we have, we are also calling in. And then I'm going to move to this entelechy and the dream self, and we're going to actually do the process. So let's start off with the brain. Very simply, the brain is actually divided into two parts. You've got the right side, which is more creative, and the left side, which is more logical and rational. So the right side is really where we talk about creative functions. Emotional intelligence is developing more through there. You've got a sense of touch, taste. The sensory system is working more on the right side of the brain. And you've also got intuition happening through the right side of the brain. Creative processes that also make us disconnect from time. So you'll notice a lot of creative people might not be very much systematic, methodical, based on time. Whereas you get very analytical thinking people, which might choose careers like accountancy or science or analytics, and they will be much more systematic, methodical, and focused on rational thinking and logical activity, right? Now, the brain also goes through different electrical currents. So there's electricity in our brain. Every time you have a thought, there's electricity, and this is affecting your DNA. It's affecting the matter, the cells of your body. This is why brain-body connection is so important in the conferencing that we're doing and all these masterclasses, is because we want to put out a message that the brain and the body are connected. They're not separate things. So when we talk about health, we cannot just talk about our psychological health. We have to also consider our physiological health. Here you see a picture, which is actually real time, of the brain fired up with the emotion of fear. And this purple space is what fear actually reads like on this scan. Looks really beautiful, but also pretty dangerous. Fear changes the biochemical reaction in the body. Adrenaline shoots up in through the nervous system and starts to push cortisol up and around into the brain. So it's very important for us to learn to manage our fear. And fear normally pops into this beta brainwave frequency. Beta is a very fast-thinking mind. We call it beta to match the Greek word as a way of explaining the way the waves are moving. So alpha brainwave frequencies are much slower. Cats, dogs, animals, plants, nature, the sea, they all bring us a type of alpha brainwave frequency because the electricity in those things I just named is less active and slower moving. That's creating an alpha brainwave, which is quite slow. Now, when you introduce things like hyperfocus or special kinds of music and studying into someone's life, it's very good for them to do it in this alpha frequency because the brain is very relaxed and it can focus really well. Beta is where we start to think, we start to worry, we start to plan, we start to get agitated. We actually start our day in beta, which is very good for us because we have to plan our day. You have to get out the front door. Well, not anymore if you're in lockdown, right? Or you have to move yourself somewhere very quickly, or you have to plan as a mother, maybe lots of different things to get coordinated into the day. So you need to go into the beta, faster thinking process, lots of thoughts coming, planning, arranging, coordinating, synchronizing. We know even women do multitasking. So they're in beta frequency. But if you stay in beta too long or for too much, or it's too intense, we would start to call that stress. And what that eventually does is shoot the body full of cortisol, and the body's then like electrified too much. So it's like getting too much electricity into a system. Theta is one of the most profound states there is, not to be confused with theta healing as a simplification of things, because theta is actually quite a special brainwave frequency where you cross the barrier between active thinking, which is up here, and inactive awareness. Theta is like the threshold between waking and sleeping. Delta is where we're sleeping. Delta brainwaves go even slower, and we have an unconscious process running. And gamma is shown by very few individuals because it's really what happens when you meditate for long periods of time. You can begin to show gamma brainwaves, which is what monks and meditators can show on MRIs. And it's become a very fascinating part of research because we see now that the most frequent brainwave state is beta, and it's becoming much stronger. And I think with all the lockdowns, we've been put more and more into alpha, which is really quite amazing. But what's fascinating is that theta can get activated in dream states. And theta is where you can begin to travel between what is rational and what is not rational. So into this middle point of the brain, symbolically, where you can start to use both functions from both hemispheres, and you can start to work more holistically. Theta is also the place where you process emotions really, really quickly. Also, where you start to have what I absolutely love to talk about, which is mystical insight, comes from theta. So having very profound moments of realization spiritually, understanding the bigger picture of things, knowing how the universe truly works, not how you want it to work or how you think it works, but knowing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be, is really activated by this very profound gland. It's called the pineal gland. It sits in the middle of the brain hemisphere, as I showed you here. It's the size of a pea. There's lots of mystical teachings about it. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. And we've known very little about it until very recently, which is why it's so exciting to share a presentation like this, because now we know many things about this pineal gland. And one thing that's been so stark for me is the fact that it's the only other place in your body that can read light. So the pineal gland sees light, and that light is an electrical activation of light from within a deep level of concentration within the brain. And it's not physical light. It's the frequency of light. And when we are very able to keep this gland clean and purified, we operate with our own internal GPS system. There are many people talking about how there has been an assault, an attack on this pineal gland by many different external stimulants, lack of quality in food supply. I'll tell you what they are: aluminium, glycophosates, and fluoride are three things that are altering the integrity of the pineal gland in most people because they are consuming certain amounts of this stimulation that is calcifying the pineal gland and actually stopping it from reading as an antenna to supreme levels of intelligence and to higher levels of awareness, because this is a gland that is helping you ultimately connect with solar energy and lunar energy and supreme intelligence and higher knowing. And of course, when you meditate, when you're doing spiritual practice, you are activating more and more of this powerful illumination. And it's very good to not go chasing after it, but to just allow it to open and awaken through the work that you're doing, so that you can begin to see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Another very fascinating thing about the pineal gland, which pretty much explains my entire presentation, is that apparently the pineal gland does not know the difference between imagination and reality. And when you are a grounded individual, that is okay, because you can use that to your advantage to dream in a new possibility, and you can bypass the part of you that is not connected to time and space, because those are illusions. This is hard for some of us to understand, but I think you'll grasp something of what I'm saying. And you can activate future possibilities through imagination and through imagining. Because, as Einstein even says, the true sign of intelligence is not knowing something. It's not knowledge of something. It's not intelligence, but it's imagination. He even says logic will take you from A to B, but imagination circles the world. So he's telling us that imagination is a supreme form of intelligence, being able to activate something and to create a strong vision for it is a very, very powerful thing for us to be doing in our lives. So if we want to get better because we're sick, what should we be doing? Imagining ourselves well. If we want success and satisfaction, what should we be imagining? Ourselves as successful and satisfied. And there's a small trick to that. We have to calibrate, we have to create the neurobiological, the neurochemical response. What does the body feel if the mind is thinking that? Some say that's 19 seconds. If you follow Abraham, you'll know that that's 19 seconds. You have to keep that state of concentration, of satisfied, successful, for 19 seconds. Or I'm healthy, I see myself healthy, I see myself healthy for 19 seconds, because that's what changes the frequency in the brain for the body to start to think, oh yes, okay, I'm healthy for these 19 seconds. So the body starts to create the chemical reaction. Remember what we said here in the brain that is telling the rest of the body, oh, okay, you are healthy right now. And this is explaining this very powerful concept of neurogenesis. So let me tell you a little bit about neuroplasticity. Thoughts can change matter, and thoughts can actually change the body. What we think is affecting our DNA. What we've inherited from our parents and the thinking systems they carry is affecting our DNA. That's what ancestral karma looks like through the body. That's what ancestral lineage is through the physiology of the body, is that it's reading through your cells the thinking systems that belonged to your past predecessors. Your programs, your struggles, your traumas, your moments where you fall down, your difficulties in life, they are all programming your mind to think a certain way. And if you don't get in charge of that process, it will just automatically affect your physical body a certain way, won't it? So it means you will have certain symptoms. So that's all the work of Louise Hay. You can heal yourself, your life. That's what she's explaining to us, is that you have very specific physiological, physical, emotional consequences to certain mental states, to certain programs, to certain beliefs. And there you can see there's an unconscious belief that is sitting in the unconscious mind. Remember, we said on the brainwave frequencies, we have all this delta, gamma. Most of us are in delta. In our sleep time, we're processing all the stuff that we don't really think about when we are awake. So there's a whole unconscious mind that's thinking thoughts. And that's why for decades, we were talking so much about psychotherapy, about being able to go in and see what is your mental process that sabotages you. What are the programs? What did you get taught when you were younger that doesn't really work for you? What are you still carrying as baggage? Where do you sabotage yourself? So neuroplasticity talks about this amazing quality of regeneration that we all have, and that we can change the way our brain is working. And there are many ways to do this. NLP does it, many different relaxation processes help take the body out of adrenaline, out of cortisol. So they also help us. But essentially, when we start using dreaming, visioning, visualization, we have one of the quickest ways to do this reprogramming than anything else, because the brain responds to the sensory input. Thinking is really the result of what you see, what you touch, what you taste, what you hear, and did I say all of them? Touch, taste, sight, touch, taste, sight. And each energy system, you have a chakra that's responsible for each one of these, all right? So all your senses are wired up to your brain, and they are wired up through the central nervous system. So when we do an NLP technique, or when we do a visioning technique, we are reorganizing the central nervous system, and we are reactivating the sensory system through imagining the senses. This is why that's so important in the vision, to tell ourselves about a possible future, the dream self, that the pineal gland doesn't know is not real yet, planting it into the mind and starting to do certain actions every day that starts to feed the dream, so that eventually the dream becomes a reality, and before you know it, you've manifested it. Now, this was the secret. Many people spoke about it for so long, but they kept pointing out that it doesn't just work so easily. What's the problem? Why is there a glitch? Why does it sound so easy and then it doesn't happen? Well, because you have to flush out all those unconscious beliefs, or you have to reprogram them. Without a vision, though, without it calling in a powerful vision, it's much, much harder to do. So I would even say to you, get the vision going, which you will tonight. Keep the vision activated. If you can, you will record the exercise we're going to do today and play it for yourself 3 times a week, and do it for 5 minutes every day, if you can, or 3 times a week for a little longer, 15 minutes, and spend some time in the dream. And then when you finish doing the exercise, just spend some time dreaming about what it will be like to have this new reality the way you want it to be. This is how you begin to illuminate this light body. And the light body is the part of you that lives beyond this current time and space. Now, why is this so important for the times that we're in? It's because more than anything else right now in the world, we have a very profound opportunity that very few civilizations have ever had. And it has to do with this emergence theory of the universe. Let me explain to you what I mean. This is in fact a theory that science is calling the closest to magic out of anything else. And emergence theory is talking about the fact that there is an actual property inside the nature of the universe that it's essential to the way the universe works, and it is this property of emergence. It's really the basis of meaning and the future of our civilization. The fact that the universe has a property of emergence. And the emergence implies that there's something new that arrives here as we evolve that wasn't here before. For example, when you bring two systems together, or when two systems meet in the universe, and I'll explain to you now how they meet and why, you start to have a functioning in that new condition that didn't exist in either one of those two things that came together. And this is emergence theory. This is what emergence explains, is that in the universe, sometimes when two things are being attracted to each other, that's what we all wish and hope for when we're looking for Mr. Right, isn't it? You're looking and hoping for that wonderful, amazing moment where this new possibility is going to arrive. Something's going to emerge that wasn't there before. In fact, in mystical teachings, they say 1 + 1 = 11, the doorway to all potential. Not 1 and 1 = 2, and not 1 and 1 = 3, which we sometimes say 2. So the whole has some properties that none of the parts have. And this is a fascinating thing to begin to try to understand, because if we are going to make it through this very important time of transition, and we're going to remain healthy enough to keep creating in a planet that is on self-destruct mode, we have to work inside of a deeper understanding of how the nature of the universe really works. And we just haven't been able to do that yet. Our brains are not evolved enough to understand how everything is integrative. That's why we have so many problems, because we haven't understood how profound the universe is. We still see things in very separate ways. We think China is separate to Turkey, and we think Congo doesn't have anything to do with New Zealand. We separate things out. We think life is different to death, and we think this whole new emergence of gender fluidity is very strange to consider. We can see how fixed our thinking is around physiology, around gender, around so many things, around race, around economies. So synergy is really explaining what we're talking about, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but emergence is explaining the part that is greater when two things come together. So what is that new stuff that starts to happen when these two things come together? That's emergence. The synergy is the fact that they come together and they make a whole bigger than what there was before, but there's something that emerges from that. And this is a phenomenal thing in the universe. This is not something to simplify. It's amazing that this exists in the universe. In fact, this fact that there is an emergence phenomenon is what changes the future that is unpredicted from the parts themselves. The parts themselves don't know what's going to happen when they come together. So synergy now is a property of relationships. For example, gravity can bring dust together into planets, or electromagnetic subatomic particles come together into atoms. These are things that are happening in the universe all the time. Gravity is attracted to dust and brings these particles together to create planets. Electromagnetic subatomic particles are brought together to create atoms by a power of what is being talked about as metaphysical gravity and emergence theory. The fact that things are emerging when they come together because of this principle of allurement. Now, this is where I want you to try and stay with me. So the story goes that the universe is designed to have within it this power of alluring one thing to another thing. We are drawn to each other. That's what connection is between human beings. People coming together via love, via pheromones, intellectual affinity, are all expressions of attraction forces. And the universe is full of attraction forces. This is the bright silver lining to COVID, post-COVID, to sustainable development. This is the true key turner to the absolute privilege and opportunity we have as human beings to be present at this time of the greatest transition for humankind that has ever existed. We have never had more knowledge and more need to transform than we do now. Never. Separate things have reason to come together, and they offer an advantage that they simply cannot offer being separate. Imagine if this wasn't the case. Imagine if things just simply didn't come together and there was no benefit for them to come together. But the whole universe is structured in a way where some scientists call it an epic love story, where attraction drives the whole evolutionary story. Attraction between two things. And so I'm claiming today that you and your attraction to what you want is already an experience that you could be having into emergence of something that is way beyond what you could be without it. Does that make sense? So your dream is attracted to you, and you are attracted to your dream. That which you desire, that which you long for, that which you crave, is part of your guiding force to become an expression of emergence in the universe. Now, what's even more amazing is that attraction theory and the principle of allurement is not just a simple thing of any two things come together and they make some wonderful emerging reality. There's an elegance to how this needs to happen for there to be true emergence. Not just simply bringing them together. Some relationships are not synergistic. They are what we call entropic. They destroy properties that are there. That's why it's important to choose a certain kind of Mr. Right and not another kind of, he looks like a Mr. Right, right? Because you could be destroying each other. It could be an entropic relationship where you come together out of your unconscious drives to reenact the problems in your attachment bond with your mother when you were a baby, and you will cathect a relationship that's very toxic. That's an example of an entropic attraction. So one way to clear that is to check, is it for the greater good? This attraction. Is your dream that you wish to be this wonderful rock star on stage impersonating Elvis for the greater good, or is it just for your ego? And that's what you're going to be checking out. So the universe is selecting, actually, in the whole cosmic dance here, whether we realize it or not, the universe is continuously selecting for more differences and unification across the diversity to create more synergistic combinations that have the most advantageous result. Evolution itself is designed by these different things coming together that have a certain elegance in their attraction. The arrangement that happens is very specific. It's not entropic. It's actually creating something advantageous that couldn't be there before. And if it's done on a synergistic level, if many people are doing this, we are evolving, right? And that's what evolution is. When you talk about consciousness and evolution of consciousness, we're explaining how it's happening. And there's a fundamental new advantage that arises. And it seems that in scientific terms, the universe is designed to continuously support and select for more and more difference that happens by more and more merger between more and more attraction between many different things coming together, and to find the best possible combinations that create the biggest advantageous result. The universe is designed to support that. So now I want to take you to this phenomenal teaching by Daniel. And I want you to be aware that he is pretty fast tracked. He's quite young and quite good looking, and he's sitting by a fire, and it's all very enchanting, and it's going at a very fast frequency. But I've given you a basic understanding of what he's talking about. And I want to offer you a chance to listen to what he's speaking about, to begin to see the implication for us as a planet, if we can understand this incredible, elegant cosmic dance that is happening around us all the time, that mystics, seers, sages, spiritual teachers of all time have been trying to explain to us in so many different ways. But really, this is astrophysics. And it's philosophy and science coming together to explain consciousness and the reason for us now having to transition out of ego-based thinking into collective synergistic thinking, but understanding that we are part of the emergence. Okay? So leave behind anything that's confusing, catch or grasp whatever makes sense, and we'll visit on the other side of it.
And one of the things that's so interesting is with our capacity for abstraction, we can not just think about our experiential self of the moment, but we can think about ourselves in abstract terms. We can think about time abstractly, deep past and deep future, right?
So because we're going into a space of dreaming, I just wanted to point out that he's just talked about how we can, with our abstract minds, and we do it all the time, we dip into the past, we dip into the future. And something of how we are evolving right now, where we are right now in the world, is breaking up our certainty and our construct of time, of what we know, what we don't know, certainty versus the old self versus the new normal. All of this is like reflecting the deconstruction of the time we're in, right?
Is what allows us to actually understand evolution itself. It's an understanding of deep past and fossil record and astrophysics. They give us a sense of the ability to abstract laws of how that change occurs over time that allows us a deeper insight as to how we got here, and then also the ability to vision a future fundamentally more beautiful and more interesting, and then be part of that creative process. So it's worthwhile just noting that our prefrontal cortex and our capacity for abstraction is a pretty new phenomena evolutionarily, right? And it's also a very powerful set of capabilities. And when you have a new phenomena that's very powerful, you're not going to know how to use it that well. Many of its applications will be destructive until you figure it out. So we can think about the future as worry. We can think about the past as regret. We can think about self abstractly in terms of negative self-comparison. So then we have spiritual ideals emerge that basically say this is all bad. Right? Mind and the ability for abstraction like this is bad. We should not think about the future at all, or think about the past and just be in the moment like the other animals and children are, see how happy they are. But it's a regressive spirituality that is actually rejecting the fundamentally novel human capability that emerged, rather than say, let's learn how to use it well for its evolutionary purposes in a fundamentally evolving universe. So if we learn how to use it well, then we say, how can we learn from the past, how universe works, to be able to imagine a future in an omni-considerate way that has fundamentally less suffering and higher quality of life across all meaningful quality of life metrics for all life, right? That is omni-considerately true, good, and beautiful. And then how can we apply all that learning now to actually help create that world? And in doing so, we stop just being a part of the whole, but in our ability to think about the whole and think about the direction of the whole, we can actually become an agent for the whole. This is fucking huge, right? The bee is serving this huge role in evolution by pollinating the plants that make the atmosphere, that make us, but they don't know they're doing that, and they can't consciously figure out how to do it better. But we actually have the capability of looking at what the whole story is and identifying as, whoa, the whole evolutionary impulse of universe brought me about and then woke up to itself in me. And so in a meaningful way, I am actually the evolutionary impulsive universe awoke to itself in a form that has adequate ordered complexity to contemplate that, and then get to consciously choose how to participate with it to be in a, not just aboard spaceship Earth, but crew, right? To help steer the direction of evolution and cosmos.
So we are all in charge of steering the cosmos through our active dreaming process and through how much alignment we have with the greater good.
And so we move from evolution as a mostly unconscious algorithmic process that selects for dominance now to a process that can be mediated by conscious agents that can actually forecast a more beautiful future and select to help create that. Does that make sense? So when we don't identify as evolutionaries, then we can be actually we identify as nouns rather than verbs, and we stay stuck where we're at, and then we need pain as an evolutionary driver, and then emergence through emergency is how we grow. As soon as we identify with the inexorability of evolution and ourselves as evolution incarnate, we stop needing pain to push us, because our whole fucking purpose for being, for becoming are actually matched. They're two sides of the same thing, is the lure of the becoming, is the bringing about more of the timeless properties of the infinite in time, right? More of the infinite through the finite. This actually becomes the basis of our existence. And everybody knows that when you are in the experience of creating beauty that didn't exist before in universe, that adds to universe, it's uniquely yours to create, you feel a kind of aliveness that's not matched by anything else. In lieu of not doing that, the emptiness causes all kinds of addiction.
I hope you're getting some of that. It's very packed, very condensed, but it's basically explaining how we can move from learning from suffering to learning from agency, knowing that you are a creator. I think many of you already know this.
Right? Because that's fundamental to what we're actually here to do. Now, when we all identify as evolutionaries, we obsolete the need as pain for a driver.
We are all able to start doing this shift now. It's a matter of discipline and a matter of understanding how profound it is, the opportunity we have.
Does that make sense? Because we have a pull driver rather than just needing the push driver. When we also identify as fundamentally interconnected parts of an interconnected universe rather than separate things, we stop thinking that there is any definition of success for self that isn't a definition of success for the whole.
That's pretty much the most profound thing I think he's saying, is that this is where we leave our ego-based identity and we begin to see ourselves merging with the greater whole, right? And that's what a lot of spiritual work is ultimately doing, isn't it? So here he's explaining why that's just a very practical result. It's the truth of it.
And we stop thinking that the idea of advantaging ourselves at the expense of something else we're inexorably interconnected to makes sense at all. So we are all agents for an interconnected whole, where our sense of self is actually an emergent property of the intersection of this system with the rest of the universe. It's actually key in terms of emergence. Your self is an emergent property of the whole universe. Because even though you wouldn't exist in the same way without your brain and your body, you also wouldn't exist without the atmosphere and the trees that make it and the plants and bacteria that make it and the gravity and electromagnetism and foundational forces. Like, the concept of I separate from universe is a misnomer. Does that make sense? So the concept of a life path for ourself that isn't a life path for universe is a misnomer, or advantage for self. So then we get, in the deepest sense, when Einstein said the idea that there are separate things is an optical delusion of consciousness. And in reality, there is one reality that we call universe, of which we are all inextricably interconnected facets. And your experience of self is a facet of that. Now, what's so fucking fascinating is that it is interconnected with all of it. It's an expression of the foundation of all of it, and it's also completely unique in all of the universe. It's a unique facet, non-fungibly unique, right? What that means is you have something to offer universe in your experience and your creativity that no one else has to offer exactly that way, which means if you don't offer it, like if Salvador Dali hadn't done Dali, Michelangelo didn't do Dali, Escher wouldn't have done Dali, Dali just wouldn't have happened. And so universe would have been fundamentally less. So when you get that, your own self-actualization is compulsory, right? You have an obligation to it. But then when you get that everyone else, if they don't self-actualize, universe is less, your participation with helping everyone else self-actualize is also compulsory. So competition is an obsolete concept. Symbiotic, so remember, universe moves towards more differentiation, more novelty, and then more symbiosis across that novelty for more emergence. And what we're moving towards is a civilization where everyone actually identifies this way as a emergent property of the whole, as an interconnected part of universe with a unique role to play, with unique synergies with all the other unique roles to play. And then with that synergy, with that human participation, then humanity actually becomes a thing. It actually becomes an emergent property. Right now it's an idea, but we don't have humanity, we don't have civilization, we have humans bumping, right? We have a bunch of organelles that haven't organized as a cell that starts breathing, right? You don't have behavior of the whole that is centrally and consciously self-organizing. But we can. And I would actually say, and this is what I wanted to have more time to get into, but to just foreshadow quickly, if we cherry pick from the huge data sets about where humanity is going right now, we can see that things are exponentially changing, which means changing at more and more rapid and more significant rates. And you can cherry pick metrics where things are getting exponentially better, and that's true, and other things are getting exponentially worse, and that's also true. Which means the future that you predict, if you just follow any of those curves, is not happening. If things are getting exponentially better and worse at the same time, does everybody kind of get that that's happening on different metrics? Then that doesn't mean things are getting better or worse. It means the current system is destabilizing. And that means self-terminating. And then we either have a discrete phase shift to a lower order entropic system or the emergence of a higher order system that is foundationally different than the current system we have in every way. So the things getting better are the pieces that can be reorganized to create a new civilization with a foundationally new structure, right? Biosphere metrics are getting exponentially worse from misapplication of technology. Technology's right application are making things fundamentally better, but technology is giving us the capacity to do things like have data analytic capabilities to inventory all the world's resources, to then be able to allocate all the world's resources to meet all of the world's needs with optimum efficiency. We never had that ability before. Like the transportation and communication technologies that can actually make us a global civilization. We never had that before, right? And so the technological capacities that require us to step up, otherwise we, self-extinction is a very real thing, also make possible a discrete phase shift in evolution that's characterized by three major things. And this will be where I end. At the level of social systems, primarily economics, the key shift we're going to move to is moving from a differential advantage economy. It's defined by private ownership, valuation based in scarcity, and differential advantage, to an economic system that is defined by making sure that the incentive of every agent and the well-being of every other agent in the commons is perfectly aligned with no externality. Meaning we actually understand that it's an interconnected system, we identify all the externalities and internalize them, so the system's actually defined by systemic advantage for the whole. This is not communism or socialism or capitalism. It's something that was not possible before to even anticipate. But it is how your body works, where none of the cells are advantaging themselves at the expense of the other. They're doing what's best for them, what's best for the whole, symbiotically at the same time, right? And so that's the key net shift at the level of macroeconomics and correspondingly governance in all of our social structures. At the level of infrastructure in the built world, we're moving from a linear materials economy where we extract from the earth at ever-growing rates unsustainably from finite resources and then turn it into trash, to a closed loop materials economy where the trash is the new stuff. We stop extracting from the earth, stop producing waste, and we actually have a post-growth negative entropy, closed loop materials economy, where we can live ongoingly at progressively higher and higher quality of life sustainably with the biosphere. So that's The infrastructure shift, that's the social structure shift, and the superstructure, the mimetic shift, is this awareness of all of us as facets of one integrated, self-evolving reality where the well-being of everyone, the well-being of everyone else, the well-being of the commons are not meaningfully calculable separate from each other. Now, what's so interesting is there used to be such a thing as local problems. When Gandhi was working with home rule for India, it was largely thought of as an Indian problem, and it didn't directly affect everybody, right? When people in the US wanted to, or who founded the US wanted to leave British Empire, there was somewhere else to go. And it was a local problem. Right now, when we deal with species extinction and ocean acidification and peak nitrogen, peak phosphorus, they're all global issues, and you can't solve them without China and without India and without the US, and without everyone participating. So the idea that we have local issues is gone. Our level of global infrastructure and technology is made to where we have all global issues. And they're actually existential. They are threatening of the biosphere. No one has ever had issues in the history of humanity that threaten the ability of the species to continue, nor did they have ones that they had to face eminently in short term, nor did they have the capacity to actually face those kinds of things. The data science, the technology that could build something fundamentally new. What that means is we have the most significant work that humanity has ever had, with the most significant capabilities, which also means the most potential to impact the biggest picture that any humans have ever had. And it's easy to think about that and then get caught back into like shit you got to do next as part of to win at the current system that is going extinct. But winning at a system that is obsoleting the capability of life on Earth to continue, winning at a dying system is not an interesting win, right? If you ever think about the definition of heaven, where you're in heaven and there are people in hell and you're happy, you have to be a psychopath. You have to be able to separate from the experience of other sentient things enough that you can be totally stoked with that level of suffering. Well, the idea in this world that the level of intensity of suffering that's happening can be happening and you can just be stoked because you're killing it in your life, you have to be mildly psychopathic. If we want to not be psychopaths, then there is no definition for success for ourselves. It is not definition of success for everything. And now when we start really taking that seriously, fucking everything changes. And then you start saying, well, what can I actually do to make my life of greatest use to all life? And then your answer to that question, if you take it seriously and really study and really work on it and don't just like ask the question, get overwhelmed, give up and go back to current stuff, your progressively better answer to that question will lead to the emergence of your life meaning and dharma and path. And correspondingly, the emergence of civilization making it. That's it.
Aren't we conditioned to kind of react?
Dude, I react every day. But the fundamental question is, it's not about the money, it's not about the sex, it's not about the weight, it's not about the diet. This is something else. If you want...
And that was Dr. Joe Dispenza coming in on the end there. So I think we've reached an understanding at least of the bigger picture here. And I'm sure there's many things in that video that were very confusing and just too much to deal with. And I've watched it a few times to be able to make sense. But enough things to actually make an impression that the science of dreaming and the importance of being able to line up with a future that is inspiring for you and that is meaningful to you and that has purpose and direction feeding into the greater whole, the greater good, is not only necessary, but it's also the divine plan. It's woven into the entire plan of evolution. I have some people saying they can't hear me really well. Is that true for the rest of you or just for Sarah? Okay, all good. Great. So tonight is an opportunity then to actually take this practice of visioning just one little step further into asking that new question about what is your dharma, what is your act of service, what is your emergence, what is emerging through you and the dream that you have. And sometimes it can feel like a bit of pressure or really overwhelming or just kind of too much to ask because it's not clear. But I want you to consider for a moment that you don't have to go to that place about it, that there's a totally different way to travel. And the way to travel is to know that you are becoming it, whether you know it or not. And the decision to open to that possibility as a way to travel there is going to get you there way faster than trying to find some kind of answer, is to know that it is already happening within you. When you start to align in this way and you start to ask these bigger questions, you can begin to actually have some very important insights that come from getting into that state that I was telling you about before. Because ultimately, there is this power of actualization in us. Aristotle talked about it as the entelechy. He said there is a probable and a possible outcome for you in your life. Whether you feed that or not is really what makes the difference. So the acorn has already in it whatever it needs to become the tree. But the water, the soil, the sunlight, they all make a difference to how well that tree grows. And so he talked about that as the entelechy, the condition of a thing whose essence is fully realized. And so as we go about this visioning tonight, this is what I mean, is that this part of you is already activated. This part of you is already ripe and ready. You've been busy here working for a long time. This is not new for you. You've been asking these questions already for a while. And now it's just time to line up with the force around you, with the guidance that's there, with the opportunities that are coming your way, and with the very specific divine intention that you have to line up with, because there's a divine intention working through you already, that you are going to say, I'm available to become this best version of myself. And I'm going to use my experience with my dream self, my visioning exercise with my dream self to line up with that. So we're going to do a quick meditation. It's a visioning exercise, so it's like a guided meditation, but I want you to create your own vision. That's why I call it a visioning exercise. And just to give you a quick background, I got exposed to this very young as a child because I always used to imagine. I had a very active imagination. Working with Dr. Shruti Pradar, she actually helps you measure out your energy system, your most active chakra. Which one is it? And you have two normally that are very operational, strongly operational. And mine happens to be Ajna chakra up here, which is very strong visioning and very specific symptoms that come also into the head and into the way of seeing. And from early on, I learned the power of visualization. And I would use that for all kinds of things for the rest of my life. Like I had long distance relationships and I would have memories, visualizations of when I was with that person, what I would be doing with that person. I had times where I was trying to change my body shape. I had dieting projects where I was trying to lose a lot of weight. And so I would imagine myself much, not thinner necessarily, but happier in a different body, or in a body that looked different to the one I have now because it was more lean. And I would have emotions attached to that. And I remembered the power of that visualization that took me out of being all kinds of things in my life and into other states continuously. And I realized that for me, it's a very natural thing, but not for many people is it a very natural thing. And yet here we are today learning how we can use this, not just as a wish fulfilling kind of idea, but actually as a way of connecting on the astral level into the ether, into what isn't here yet, but is in your priming, in your primordial essence, nature, to have happen, and say, yes, I want it to happen, but you have to switch it on. Because if you don't, it's like you don't give enough sunlight, enough water, enough good soil coverage for that seed potential, and you just allow it to unfold as it will unfold. And it might grow into a tree, and it might be a good enough experience. But when you feed it, you can begin to create a certain kind of flourishing and a certain kind of thriving in what you become, way beyond what would happen automatically. So some people talk about that as living life on purpose. Other people call that activation. Other people call it higher dreaming. Some people take it even further and they do light body dreaming. Today we're going to do this just as a visioning exercise. So I want you to get comfortable wherever you are and to take a moment and reflect back on the question that you might have had. And see if this is a question that you can formulate now in the best way. If you still have it clear enough from before, state it as you had it. And if not, refine it a little bit and see if you can begin to imagine the answer coming after this visualization. So you're going to set an intention to get the answers from this visioning exercise with your feet nice and flat on the ground. I'd like you to think a little bit about the weight of your body now and just feel how you feel wherever you are. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Feel the weight of your body leaning back behind you. And let your eyelids become heavy and drop down towards your bottom lids. And move your awareness back into the base of your eyes, the base of your throat. And now move down into the base of your spine. Let your awareness come all the way down now into your hip joints, down into your thighs, your knees, your lower legs, traveling down towards the ankles, into your feet and into your toes. And feel the weight of your body now coming down towards the earth. And slowly let your awareness drift up now from the earth into your ankles, up into your knees, up into your hip joints, and start to travel through the back of your spine, up through the body, into the back of your neck, up into your head, into the middle of your brain. Take a rest there in the middle of your brain. I want you to imagine that you have a wooden throne. Between the right hemisphere of your brain and the left hemisphere of your brain is a symbolic wooden throne. It has a purple velvet cushion and purple velvet armrests. And you sit yourself down onto that throne, looking out through your mind's eye, and all you see is a white, spotless mind. And in the far distance, from a far away, distant, white, spotless mind, you notice a black dot on the horizon line. It starts to come closer towards you, and you're not quite sure what it is. But as it starts to come closer, you start to notice a shape forming of a human being. And this shape of a human being comes closer and closer until it's finally 100 meters away, and you begin to recognize this as a version of yourself. You're a little surprised at first, but then totally comforted to know that this part of you is actually approaching you. And from a far distance, you can see this part of you looking up at you, smiling from a distance, and you start to feel so acknowledged, so accepted, and so welcome to join with this part of you. This is your dream self, the part of you that existed before you were born. The part of you that will be there when all of this is over. The part of you that knows all the questions you've ever asked, and the part of you that knows all of the answers. Your best friend, your confidant, your medicine, your shaman, your shaman, your healer, your wise woman, your wise man, all wrapped into one. Your inner knowing, your highest self, your fully realized self is now 10 meters away from you. And as you look into the eyes of this incredible being, you recognize nothing but the mirror of your own incredible being within. And your dream self smiles at you, warms you up with the sparkle in their eyes, and you feel this powerful, powerful energy, acceptance, and kindness. Your dream self steps forward, leaving 9 steps between you, steps forward again, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And now 3 steps away, you take 1 step forward towards your dream self, and your dream self takes another one towards you. There is a meter between you. Your dream self raises her right hand up into the sky as a gesture to connect with you. You raise up your hand, your right hand up into the sky. You raise it up now with me in this visioning exercise, and you move it forward as though you're about to touch your dream self. Raise up your hand now in this visioning meditation as a gesture to activate this imaginary vision of your dream self coming closer towards you. You feel your hands drawing closer and closer as though there were a kind of magnetic attraction towards them. And as they touch, you feel the heat moving down through your palm into your wrist, your elbow, your arm, your shoulder, up into the scapula of your arm, moving to the other scapula and into the other shoulder, into the other arm. And you feel this entire trace of heat, energy, light, and love moving through your entire system now. And as this happens, you begin to understand the greater purpose of all that you are going through, and all that you suffer through, and all that you struggle through no longer lives in you in such a way. The light, the love, and the transmission from your dream self is starting to transform all of this to become deep teaching, deep learning, and deep acceptance of your life's path. You start to understand all the reasons why. You start to see the greater opportunity. You start to feel just within your body this deep knowing that everything is as it is and as it should be. You absorb all of this light, love into your body-mind system, deep into your arteries, running through all your veins, down towards your hips, your belly button, into your womb, into your groin, into your legs, your thighs, your knees, your feet, ankles, toes, all the way back up through the entire body, up through the back of your legs, the back of your buttocks, the back of your spine, up into your neck, into your head, into your cranium, washing over your skin, underneath your skin on your face. You feel absorbed, received, loved, and accepted for all time. You ask this question to your dream self that you imagined asking at the beginning of this training. And as you plant that question through your mind to your dream self, you trust fully knowing that the answer will arrive in good time. You open your eyes and look back into the eyes of your dream self that you can see now is only smiling at you and transmitting now one final message, that what is to come is nothing but a salute to the higher intelligence within you. Whatever you will pass through, whatever is still to be experienced and realized, is in honor of, in service of the emergence of you into your full realized self. And that your dream self is only here to reflect that to you. And whenever you need any support, guidance, reassurance, knowing, love, light, support, you can just call on the special friend, this eternal, higher knowing, and be reassured and calmed to continue on. And you start to feel this deeper sense of alignment with the greater good, with all that is in service of the greater good, that you yourself are an expression of the magnificent emergence of this universe, that you too are standing here born for this time to be part of this powerful emergence. You drop your hand down, you bring it back to your heart, and you notice the breathing on your chest. In this last glance with your dream self, you notice that this is a goodbye for now, and your dream self turns with her back to you and starts to walk back into the distance, into the white spotless mind from which she came. You notice her returning to a black dot on the horizon line, disappearing into the distance and becoming absorbed into the white light, the white, bright, spotless mind. You hold for a moment this very powerful connection that is eternal, that was there before you were born, that will be there when all comes to pass. And any time of any day when you need to remember this, you just think upon this part of you, the self-realized part of you that knows all there is to know. And you wait to live into the answer to the question that you've asked now. And we're going to take 3 synergistic breaths together on the count of 3. After that, we will take a breath all together in as a group to honor and commemorate this very special moment of connecting with our dream selves. 1, 2, 3. Breathing in and now exhaling. And now again. 1, 2, 3. And exhaling. And one last time, breathing in on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. This time as you breathe in, feel some heat coming into the body, like a white light traveling in, reminding you of this synergistic love and light that came from your dream self. And as you exhale, release all the old paradigm thoughts, fears, anxieties, and worries. Let go of all that no longer serves you. Relax your body down into the earth, knowing that she continues to carry you, support you forever. And on your next inhalation, I'd like you to start rubbing your fingertips together. If you feel you'd like to, you can bring your fingers to your face, feel the contact. And I thank you all very much for spending this time with me.